Hello, and welcome back to Let's Talk About Conflict. My name is Lynn Nash, and I am your host. Other than hosting this podcast, I'm the mother of five kids and the spouse of Steve, and I have a law firm, the Nash Legal Group. I'm an attorney, I'm a full-time mediator, I also teach, and here we go. Let's talk about conflict. The reason I have this podcast are for really magical things like we're going to talk about today. We are in the fourth episode of a five-part series about techniques to help you when you're hearing no. You're in a really difficult conversation, you're under a lot of conflict, and you're hearing no. What are ways past no? And it is this fabulous book by William Ury called Getting Past No. And I want to rearticulate getting past the first no. At some point, there is a really good no, and it's not bad to hit that no. And as a negotiator, I encourage you to know where the actual no is. However, the first no is simple and it's easiest response. And so, how do you get past that first no? So, in getting past no, William Ury has identified five different overall strategies with different techniques underneath them. The first, which you can go back and listen to an episode on, is don't react. Go to the balcony. The second, don't argue, step to their side. Not easy. The third, don't reject, reframe. Also, not easy. All of this is truly trying to set an atmosphere of we and how to work the problem. So today, the fourth way to get past no, William Ury says, build them a golden bridge. I'm always like, the balcony and the bridge and the thing is like, that's great, but I don't have a balcony and there's no such thing as building a golden bridge. And so what is that? You get a little too literal sometimes, Lynn. But let's go back and talk about what does he mean by building them a golden bridge? What is the don't push element? Okay. So everybody, me included, you included, wants and needs to save face. Nobody wants to look like a fool. No one wants to look like they got taken advantage of. All right. If you can start to see the other side of your conflict or your negotiation, if you see them start to lack interest in your proposals, if you hear these really vague statements that they're not giving you much information anymore, if you find that they're just using this as a way to delay a final answer or even just a no, there may be a few very common reasons at play. All right. And these are identified by Ury in this don't push chapter, right? A really common reason may be that the solution you're coming up with wasn't just their idea. All right. We know these people. We've all worked with these people. We have friends like this. Everything needs to be their idea. So if it's not their idea and they get the impression it was your idea, then that's a problem for them. That goes back to ego, that goes self-worth, that goes back to need, that goes back to so many different things. But the point being, if you're starting to kind of it's fading, it's not finalizing things, or you can start to feel things are starting to feel like the airport where they're circling for the fifth time because they can't quite get the landing lane they need. It may be because the solution was not created by your counterpart on the other side. Here's some other things that may be. There may be some unmet interests. Okay. So we go back to that being positional or being interest-based. You got to make sure you're covering all the interests. Did you overlook something that maybe your counterpart has a huge interest in? I.e., not only do they need it to be their idea, which some people do, but maybe what they really need is to include their boss and make it look like it was their boss's idea because they know their boss is that person who's going to need to save face and want to run this up the chain. And that's going to help them in the end. Is there an interest in family discords where somebody has always felt like they always give in and this is the one time I just cannot give in? It's like, well, why do you feel like you're giving your back to those open-ended questions? Did you miss something? Okay. So be sure you're paying attention. There may be some unmet interests. Back to common reasons why things are not really getting to an end. Um, People may have it just may be a fear of losing face. What does that mean? A fear of losing face. Nobody wants to look bad, right? That fear of, if I say yes to this solution we've been working on, am I going to look like a fool? Am I going to look weak to these people in my organization? Am I going to appear to be the kind of person who gives in? That fear of losing face, that fear of losing authority, whatever it is, people just sometimes they're really excited and they work on this thing, and then it's like you can feel the breaks happen, and everybody's looking around like, I don't understand why we're breaking, because we're almost here. You got to pay attention. It could be that it's not their solution. It could be the unmet interest. It could be the fear of losing face, and it could be, sorry about that, too much too fast. All right. Now, this is the one that makes me crazy, because I deal with this all the time. For me as a mediator, mediation is a guided negotiation. So too much too fast. I do half-day mediations, not my favorite. I like a full-day mediation because it's much easier to get people to the place of making a good decision and not feeling like they're rushed. The too much too fast happens almost every time when we're working on a 4-hour half-day mediation timeline, because we don't have very much time to get the interest out, and then we start the negotiation and they feel like they've got to push through and get it done. It's just not uncommon that too much too fast, and then everybody you can almost feel the brakes being pumped, like, whoa, I need everything to slow down. And so it's easier to say no because it's too fast, the time constraint is too much on them, and to go back to all of those things about maybe an unmet interest, and maybe it wasn't their idea, and maybe they're afraid of losing faith. Too much too fast, it's the same idea. They are under some kind of pressure that it's easier for them to really push for no than to give you any kind of yes. All right. Those are common reasons at play. We're all humans. I think if you think about your own life, you can probably come up with 2 or 3 examples of how that worked out for you in times when you were that person on the other side saying those things, right? Always remember, there really is a human on the other side. There really is somebody else who is trying to figure out how to do this. Building a golden bridge requires involvement from the other side. You, lovely human, me, you cannot be the, aha, look, I have the solution. I know what to do. You just need to do what I think. We all love it when someone runs at us like that, right? Instead, you've got to get the input from the other side and show how you crafted this resolution or this agreement together, right? It is not about one party's vision, belief, whatever, even if it really was your idea. Even if I got to tell you, I bet most mediators can say the same thing. Man, sometimes it starts and you can look down the line and go, if this and happens, we can get it done. If this, you can see where it's very likely they actually could reach resolution. And yet we can't make you go there. We can't make people see it or find it. We just keep leading people to it. It's the same idea. You want to build that bridge that says, hey, what would this look like, or how would that work, or what is making you anxious about not moving forward at this point? Don't tell the other side what they want. All right, just don't. It is so tempting to tell everybody what they actually want, what they think. I do that in my family plenty. Am I right? Not all the time. Probably more than not, because I live here and I gave birth to those humans. But when you're out in the real world and you're negotiating and you're in conflict and you are trying to figure it out, do not tell the other side what they want. It's never, ever going to help you get to a solution. It doesn't build the we. You can ask questions like, based on what you told me, this seems like what you want. Is that correct? That's checking in. That's reframing what they're telling you. That's putting it back out there so that they can confirm or say no. It still becomes a we, right? Work to build on the ideas. How would you solve this problem? How would you do this problem where both of us get something out of it and we both can go back to our constituency and know that we've done the right job? You can always offer your counterpart a choice. Yes. If you've been listening and you've been testing the waters and you think you have a sense of it, you can say, would this or that work better for you? Would here or there be the right solution for you, for your company, for this moment? If you have the ability to choose between A, B, or C, it is so much easier than going back out and trying to invent a D out of nowhere, right? Choices, if you ask a college student or a high school student, would you rather have a fill in the blank test or a multiple choice test? I promise you, they're going to say multiple choice. Now, I got to tell you, as I got further in college and in degrees, I was like, can I please fill in the blank? Because the multiple choice got really hard, especially on the bar exam. But most people out in the world today, if they can look between choices and make a selection, that is easier than having to go build it from the ground up. Okay. So use that idea of saying, hey, if it's between this, and this, which one sounds the best? And then you have a jumping off point. And then you can work from somewhere. But it is building something out of the ether into from nowhere to somewhere is much harder to do. Clue in to ensure all the interests are met, right? Went back to what is really common things. Do not assume, this is the hard part, do not assume the other side is irrational and can never be satisfied. And don't assume that you cannot meet their needs without undermining your own. Okay? That's a fixed pie bias. If you have this fixed pie, right? Think about pie. Pie comes in this beautiful circle, and I can only cut so many slices out of this pie, and there's only so much pie, and there'll never be any more pie. And that's true when you have a literal pie on the counter. But when we talk about making the pie bigger, it says, hey, we have some interests here that have nothing to do with the actual content of this pie. So when we add it, it actually makes more. The pie plate actually got bigger, and there is something else on the table that we can stretch, and everybody can take a little bit more to satisfy the needs of their interests. Search for those low cost, high benefit trades. My students will tell you, I love reciprocity. I think there's so much value in reciprocity. I encourage people when they're building a negotiation strategy to think of at least 3 to 4 things that really don't cost them anything that they can give away quickly. What are those quick giveaways? Give something early, because the theory of reciprocity says if you give to them, they should want to give to you. Now you give and they want to take and take and take. We all know takers. We all know what sponges do. Don't get involved with the sponge. That's why you have to have 2 or 3 really easy, cheap giveaways that don't cost you anything, because it still doesn't cost you anything if they're a sponge and they're never going to give back. Use an if-then formula, right? If that happens, you're testing again. If this happens in 6 months, instead of the 12-month period we've been talking about, would you then agree to a 10K bonus? It's just testing. You're testing again. Check those interests. Is it about time? Is it about cost? Is it about satisfying current needs? Is it long-term needs? Is it emotionally driven? Is it truly about someone who has such a fixed pie bias mentality that they can't understand there's more at play on the table? So you're going to spend your time trying to explain the expansion of the pie. Don't overlook it. You, as a person with a no coming at you in conflict, it is really hard to do what I'm about to say next, but I'm going to encourage you to do it. And yes, you're going to have to take that deep breath and go to the balcony sometimes to do it because it's not the easiest thing. But I'm going to encourage you, and William Ury encourages you to see everyone, every person as a rational person, even when they don't act like it. Okay. Even when they are doing these things and your brain is like, you've got to be kidding me. Where on earth are you coming from? Don't make the face I just made. Don't be erratic. Don't give them the you're nuts. Why am I dealing with you? Don't do it. As long as there is a logical connection in their mind's eye between their interests and their actions, you still have the ability to apply some influence. Now, we talk about mental health on this. If people are really spinning out of control and that's different. We're not talking about that. If you're in the process of trying to work through a problem, as long as you can still hear and see their thoughts stringing together, stay in it. Even if you need to take a break, stay in it and don't look at them like they're nuts. See them as a rational human being. Just treat people the way you want to be treated, right? Golden rule always applies. And let's really not overlook basic human needs, right? This is not touchy-feely stuff, folks. This is just, we're people. And I don't care how much time you spend staring at a cell phone or a computer screen, we still have basic human needs. There is a desire for security. There is a great desire for recognition in our work. We all want some control over our own fate. That is basic human need. Maslow's hierarchy of need, we could go down that path if you really want to, but it's not the point. There's just some basics that we all want. We want shelter. We want security. We want to feel confident. We want to be recognized for our skills and our talents and our hard work. All of those things. It's just who we are. We're human beings. And no amount of logic and no amount of focusing only on literal coding ever takes that component out, right? I got great job security because I understand those human needs have to be met. So when basic human needs are ignored or unmet, they can block every agreement and any agreement. And to ignore the people part, which I got to tell you, I'm in law, and it's funny, it's like we don't have a job without people, but I had a really wise, very successful high partner tell me early on, most people in law don't want to deal with the people. The attorneys don't actually want to have to deal with people. And that I just always thought that was insane because I am so people oriented, but the great majority of people out there in the world maybe aren't. So if you are someone who has educated yourself to not overlook basic human needs, you will always be 3 steps ahead. And people will enjoy your company because you are frankly paying attention to some very basic things. All right, this is good. You're going to love this. Help your counterpart back away from a deal without backing down. What do you mean? What does that mean? Face saving is at the core of every negotiation process. And it is not just ego. It is not just somebody's overinflated ego. Again, remember, we got to look at them as a rational, logical human being until truly, truly proven otherwise. And it doesn't take the restatements. It takes a lot of stuff. You got to recognize people might need to save face. They really might need to walk away from the deal at the state it's in right now. But if you help them keep face, let them back away gracefully, you will leave the door open for them to come back. My loving husband is in sales, and he has to have the ability to go get another apple off that tree. There are different kinds of sales. There's sales where I'll never see this tree again, and so whatever I can get off that and move on. But if you're in a relationship sales role, you are constantly having to go back and ask, hey, can I sell you something else? If you have caused a counterpart in a sales negotiation to feel like they did not save face within their organization, that they were denied time or they were denied the ability to negotiate on their own behalf because they just had it shoved down their throat, I will promise you, you're not going to sell a second apple from that tree. You're just not. Remember, sometimes people really do need to back away. What you want them to do is back away, but not leave, right? Back away from the deal, take a beat, come back to it. If you do that where somebody is doing it with their self-worth, dignity, ego, sense of honor, and principles intact, you will get to come back to the conversation. All right. Now, this is one I love. Go slow to go fast. I got to tell you, we already talked about this, the 4-hour mediation idea. Between that and an 8-hour mediation, everything is fast. The 8-hour mediation gives you more time to get the deal done. And it's still one day. The 4-hour mediation gives you so little time to actually execute. And I got to tell you, as far as I can tell, it's really about money. People don't want to pay for a whole day mediation when they think they can get it done in 4 hours. It's way more work as a mediator in a 4-hour mediation. Just is. If you're, excuse me, in my opinion, if you're doing it the way I think mediation ought to be done. There you go. Gospel according to Lynn. So Ury's point is go slow to go fast. If too much has to be decided in too short of a time, do whatever you can to make the process easy. Do whatever you can to make the process easy when you've got a short period of time. When you can slow it down, it is much harder to say no. It is much harder to work on a deal over a slow period of time and not close the deal. You don't want to be rushed. You don't want to feel like you didn't have time to think through everything. Instead of pushing, that fast, we got to get this done as fast as possible. Instead of doing that, encourage the person you're in this negotiation with or in this conversation with to go and consult some people. Go do a little homework. Go check in. I'll still be here. This isn't a finished process yet. We've got time and I want it done right. And I know you want it done right. So we're gonna make sure we're all on the same page. That's a beautiful thing. Confirm what are the understandings are before you move on to any more steps. We've talked about all of these sort of things. And now it's time to draft the contract. Is there anything we've left out? Do we have agreement? Check down the list. Do we have agreement? You've got to make sure those terms are clear and as specific as possible before you move on. That's all part of helping build that golden bridge so that you get the final deal. So, Ury's final thoughts here are building a golden bridge just involves so much more than merely putting a great, attractive proposal on the table. Number one, you've got to involve that other person in the process of setting up the proposal. You have got to help work together. That's the we, not the I. That's the interest-based negotiation over positional negotiation. Number two, look beyond obvious interest to find really tangible needs, right? That thing I talked about. We're going to look, we know what this pie is that we got to work on, but what else is there? Recognize there may be a need for recognition. Recognize there may be a control of timing on the other parties from their needs. Look beyond the obvious. Number three, help your counterpart save face if they got to move away from that initial position they took. If they are stepping towards you, that may make them real anxious and real nervous. So give them everything they need to come and meet the deal where the deal is, to make sure that victory is seen in their constituency and that it wasn't a concession. Even if it is a concession, nobody wants to say, yeah, I conceded, I backed off, they win. You're not going to change some of that mentality. Give them a way to save face. Number four, go slow to go fast. Slow down. Walk through those steps. ensure you didn't miss anything in the details, because nothing will blow up a deal faster than we got all this stuff going. Oh, but we missed this one thing that hinges everything else. And all of a sudden, the whole thing blows up and you're back to square one going, how did we do that? That's generally how you do it, because you didn't check in all the way through. Is there anything tied to this provision or this money or this timeline that would make a difference down the road for you, for your company? So Ury says, hey, if you can get them across the bridge, congratulations, I bet you have a deal. Now, if you don't move them across the bridge, and you're probably going to have to take a little bit more of an aggressive position, it's going to make it harder to say no. And that is what we're going to talk about on the last episode of our 5-part series. So again, today, don't push, build them a golden bridge. Talk about the ways to do it. Got to get them involved. Don't miss the tangible needs beyond those obvious interests. Help them save face if they are moving away from that initial position, and go slow to go fast. Slow down, slow yourself down. That's not easy sometimes, but it truly helps you get a deal done. And so we'll talk a little bit more in our last episode about moving into a more aggressive position. I hope you've enjoyed this series. We're always interested in hearing what you'd like to learn more about. This is truly an educational podcast. It is not meant to be the Gospel of Lynn. It is meant to help you tools, and I don't want to say tricks, but maybe tricks of my trade, where we understand why things are going the way or not going that way in a negotiation. So please come back, join us for the part 5 of 5 next time. It's been a pleasure having you here today. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you down the road. Okay.